What's up? What's happening? Welcome in. It's Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And literally in the commercial break here, since the Russell show ended and since we began,
Breaking news. Oh, snap. News is broken. Breaking news.
we have fairly significant breaking news on the Commanders front. I don't know fully what it means yet. We're going to obviously get a lot more on this, hopefully, as the show goes. But the Commanders just announced 2 minutes ago that they have named Mark Klaus, and I hope that I'm getting Mark's last name pronounced correctly. Mark Klaus has been named the team president, overseeing all facets of the organization's business operations. This is from the press release. Klaus, spelled C-L-O-U-S-E, joins the Commanders from the Campbell's Company, where he served as the president and CEO since 2019, overseeing a portfolio of brands that includes Campbell's, it's in the soup company, Rouse, the sauce company, or the sauce brand, Goldfish, Pepperidge Farm, and more. He will begin in his new role in late January. Statement from Josh Harris, of course, the managing partner of the Commanders. In Mark, we have found a dynamic leader with a stellar track record of guiding organizations to excellence, building brands that connect deeply with consumers, and ultimately delivering best-in-class experiences and lasting memories. Mark shares our commitment to using the power of the Commanders franchise to bring people together. As a military veteran and accomplished business builder, he has a proven ability to strengthen both the organizations he leads and the communities he serves. I'm confident in Mark's dedication to building a championship caliber organization and to support football operations in our drive for excellence on the field. At Campbell's, he led this again from the press release. So I'm doing the thing that I kind of hate, which is just reading the press release from the people who are trying to send their message in whatever way. I am reading this to you for the first time that I am reading it myself. This could lead, if like Sean and the team over at Commanders PR wanted to ever have me have a Ron Burgundy moment, Anthony, where I just read the script that was in front of me and they wanted to get me, this would be the time, because this is how fresh this news is here. I'm just reading. You got any better ideas?
No, I'm on Twitter right now as you do that, so
Okay.
I'm trying to look for more.
Okay, if you find anything over in that hellscape, you let me know. At Campbell's, Klaus has led a transformation that reshaped the company's strategy and portfolio to fuel growth. Under his leadership, Campbell's has built a high-performing culture with industry-leading employee engagement while delivered consistently strong business results while making a lasting impact on Campbell's communities. Okay, that's PR jargon. And I hope it's true. Just sure. He brings more than 30 years of leadership experience to the Commanders organization. He's a graduate of West Point, so that's pretty big time. He played on the basketball team at West Point. He began his career in the U.S. Army, serving for 6.5 years as a helicopter pilot and rising to the rank of captain by the end of his service. Following that, he joined Kraft Foods for a variety of management positions over a 15-year stint with the company, and then was named president of North America at Mondelez in 2012, later served as their chief commercial officer, and then was named the CEO of Pinnacle Foods, driving significant growth for the company. And then January 19, he was named Campbell's president and CEO. He says in a statement that he is incredibly grateful to Josh Harris and the Washington Commanders ownership group for their opportunity to lead this iconic franchise into a new chapter of growth, said incoming president Mark Klaus. The Commanders' passionate fan base, which has stood by this team for decades, deserves nothing less than our unwavering commitment to excellence. I look forward to supporting ownership as well as Adam Peters and Dan Quinn and doing everything in our power to build a championship caliber organization. He's married. His wife is named Kathy, and they have two sons, Spencer and Logan. Spencer spelled with an S, not only at the beginning, but in the middle. That's the breaking news. That's the lowdown. Anthony, have you found anything on Twitter?
I haven't found anything. Everybody just saying he'll be overseeing, or I guess he'll only be involved in the business operation. But
Right.
you already touched on that.
I did. I read that out of the press release,
Yes.
which is the same press release that everyone else is reading from.
All right, one thing I will add.
Yes.
He was at Sunday's game.
Well, yeah, because so they included. This is how fresh this is. I on YouTube right now. I got a graphic about the run game. We're not. That's how fresh this breaking news is. They also did include a picture of him, which That's the picture of him and Josh Harris,
Yep.
which I didn't just put on the screen in a way that you'd like to put a graphic on the screen for the YouTube audience. Nope, I held up my phone to the camera because that's how fresh this is. And actually, Anthony, as I was reading, that kind of gets me to a take, if you will. You know why nobody knows anything but what's in the press release?
Because there are no leaks.
Because there are no leaks. And I think we've all been distracted, in fairness to us, with the football stuff. And it's not like on the business front, there's been a lot of attention on this. Obviously, it's kind of been happening in the background. And, I'm sure that this is not a total surprise to whichever reporters consider this a part of their portfolio. But on the business side, the thing we've been focused on is the RFK stuff, which it feels like a good time to mention. We'll have Eric Flack on at 6 o'clock to discuss. So Flack, 6 o'clock on the RFK news. Why did Steve Daines finally let this bill out of committee? And what's the chances that it passes? And if it doesn't, then what? And also, why was Adam Silver at the game? Could the Wizards be involved in this? We'll get all that with Flack at 6 o'clock. But the fact that there were no leaks, not a single, we don't know anything about who was involved in this process. And think back, even to the coaching search, even to the GM search. I guess the GM search happened pretty instantly. It was yep, they are getting, I guess we found out the Bob Myers and Rick Spielman thing. And then we knew they would interview Adam Peters. Pretty quickly, it was Adam Peters. But we kind of even knew the Bob Myers thing. They announced that, whatever. And then they, the way a typical GM search and coaching search go, Schefter and Rappaport and all those people can get a lot of information, and Keim and Nikki and Ben here get information, not only because they know people in the organization, and at that point some people were willing to talk, some people weren't, but there's agents involved, and agents are often the best sources. They want to talk because they want their clients' names in the news because that makes them a hotter commodity. I don't know that the new Commanders team president, I don't know that Mark Klaus or Mark Close, we need to, I'll double check that in the break. But that he has an agent. I don't think the president of Campbell's Soup and all the brands that are underneath the Campbell's company has an agent. So this was Josh Harris working in the background with probably Mitch Rales and Mark Ein to some extent. And now they have their guy. And this guy's led a massive corporation with deep ties to the NFL. Think of how many Campbell's Chunky Soup commercials you see. This group is tied to the NFL. They understand how to market to NFL fans. Or he understands how to market to NFL fans, assuming that he was a part of some of those initiatives. He comes from a commercial background. And on those levels, this seems like a pretty freaking smart hire. Obviously the last team president was Jason Wright, who came from a crisis management background at a time that they needed crisis management. But instead of just using him as a consultant, the Snyders were like, hey, actually, you want to just run this thing from the inside? And Jason was basically like, sure. Very different process. I don't know how many other people they interviewed. I don't know how many people they talked to about, potential larger role where you have some control over football or anything. I'm guessing zero, because that's the other part of this, right? Is keeping these things separate, allowing Adam Peters, who I'm sure was told when he was hired, you will not report to anybody but the owner. By leaving the president job open above Adam Peters, who I believe is just general manager. I do not believe he is president and general manager. That does allow you to eventually promote Adam Peters as well, should you want to. And then, a Ben Sosna or one of these other rising superstars in the Commanders front office, you promote that person who's currently, or even Lance Newmark, the assistant GM. These guys are going to start to get interviews for other jobs, and you need upward mobility for them, and you preserve that on the football side by having an open spot as a president of football operations level for Adam Peters. So that's nice. Seems like a good hire. But I think the biggest takeaway, Anthony, is what just happened to all of us? We learned because
there were no leaks.
There were no leaks. So that changes the vibe. To an extent of the show and Vibe Check Tuesday. We can talk football. We can also talk this. We're going to go make some calls and see if we can get anybody with any particular insight on this. I don't know who's on the Campbell soup beat. Anthony, any ideas? Can we get Mama Kelsey on the show? She's done a soup commercial.
That would be tough to do.
I mean, she does interviews.
Yeah.
See how good a producer you are. Yeah. What?
My light is flickering over here.
Oh, okay. I thought you were giving me that look because you're like, are you serious right now? Which also, in fairness, would have been fair.
That too.
But we're going to make some calls, see if we can get anybody who can get any more insight on this. And we'll take your calls at 301-230-0980. Again, the breaking news, the Commanders have a new team president. Mark Klaus is the new team president for the Commanders. We're talking about that and where the Commanders are from a football sense going into this bye week. Next with you on The Hoffman Show. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube as well at the Team 980. Do have confirmation from Commanders PR. The new team president starting in January is named Mark Klaus. Klaus, it's spelled C-L-O-U-S-E, but is pronounced Klaus. So there you go. Tell all your friends that you heard the news here on the Team 980. If we can hunt down someone who has more information on this guy, who is incredibly accomplished, 30-year professional, including multiple head roles at a variety of companies, been a C-suite level executive for the better part of 2 decades now in his career, graduate of West Point, and most recently the president and CEO at Campbell's, who has deep ties from a marketing side to the NFL. We will get more information for you. We will have that guest on a little later in the show. Obviously, we'll continue to work this week on that as well. But if you want to chime in, I don't know, someone work for the Campbell's company, you can call in. Or if you're just a football fan, Commanders fan who wants to talk about the actual football, we can do that because it's a Vibe Check Tuesday, and that's what we do. We check in with you at 301-230-0980. And let's start off with Kenny in Charlotte. Kenny, thanks for calling. You are on the Hoffman Show.
What's up, Craig? What's up, man?
What's going
What
on,
y'all
Kenny?
Ain't too much, man. I'm feeling like I just came home from college and finally remember how my mother's great Kool-Aid tastes, man. I feel wonderful, man. I feel wonderful about this team, man. And first of all, I just think we got healthy, man. You know what I mean? Like the quarterback looked healthy, regardless of what they said about he's healthy, he's fine. His ribs are no excuse. That run that he made up the middle for a touchdown proved to me that he's feeling better. And then even when he rolled out opposite and threw against his body, I don't feel like that was a throw that he would have made last week or even the week before that. So I'm just glad my quarterback is healthy, man. And lastly, I just wanted to ask, I'm hearing on different radio stations, even in Chicago, so on and so forth, that teams might be trying to take another swing at Cliff next year. So I'm just wondering who's there now that's going to step up and take his place, in your opinion? Appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thanks, Kenny. Great call and appreciate you. I think that the 2 things should be said in response to that question. One, I don't think Cliff is guaranteed to leave. Like, I do think that he will be coveted for interviews. I also tend to think he might turn them down. I think Cliff is really enjoying being just an OC. And I think that long-term, the competitor in him will want to ultimately get back to a head coaching job. But I kind of think he's just going to be like, hey, guys, I'm not that interested in going back into that. I enjoy this. I would like to enjoy this for longer. He's getting paid by the Cardinals till I think 2027 or 2028. I forget which one, but it's one of those 2 years. He has a ton of money still coming to him, so he doesn't need it financially. I mean, look, Cliff's made a lot of money in his career because he's been a high-level coach for a long time. So when we talk about needing the money, everything's relative. But, like, he's already making head coach money. So he could double up, or he could enjoy his life, not be a head coach, get to work with Jayden Daniels for the next 2-3 years at least and try to win something significant and then go on to the next challenge. But I think he's really enjoyed getting to learn about being a head coach from DQ. And I could see, obviously, this was a misguided effort in a lot of ways. But remember when Eric Bieniemy came and like Ron Rivera was like, I'm going to take EB under my wing because I think after this season he's going to be a coveted head coach somewhere and I want him to be prepared. So, they gave him the assistant head coach title and all that kind of stuff. I could see Cliff after this season maybe getting some of that and saying like, hey, I want to be a little bit more involved and learn some things from the head coach seat that that are going to prepare me, because after this year, if we have another good year, I'm not going to turn down offers like I did. So that would be thing one. Eventually, they will need to replace him, I would think. I don't think he's just going to be, what Steve Spagnuolo has become for Andy Reid in Kansas City, where he's just like, I'm the coordinator here forever, and I'm going to be awesome. Spags probably should have gotten some other head coaching looks by now, but he's an older, or seen as older. Like, he's not the hot, young, new guy, right? Even if he's not, like, anciently old. It's not like he's coaching in his 80s. And he's also a defensive guy, and who was a head coach the first time around, and that, for whatever reason, unless you're like Dan Quinn and you're really dynamic as a person, is probably not going to get you a second head coaching look a ton. And so for Cliff, when he eventually goes, I think Tavita Pritchard is the most obvious guy who's next. Tavita obviously was here last year. Tavita was retained by this staff, and they really, really like him in terms of what he's doing as a quarterback. A quarterback's coach, could they also give that title of OC to the passing game coordinator, Brian Johnson, who was an OC last year in Philly, didn't go particularly well, but a lot of people, I think, look at that and say Sirianni really kind of handcuffed him. And you look at what he's learned by being with Cliff this year and being with Anthony Lynn. I guess Anthony Lynn's name should be mentioned. I tend to think that they'll probably go in a different direction, but they could go Anthony Lynn there. And then I think long term, if you think about a pipeline, which is something that I do think Dan thinks about, because, last time he lost a coordinator after a really successful run was obviously Kyle after they lost the Super Bowl. And that's something that Dan has great regrets about, is they didn't have a really ready to go, let's keep some continuity guy. They brought in Steve Sarkisian, and they had a decent offense the year after, but then it went downhill from there. But it was a totally different system, totally different scheme, who wasn't in the building, and they could have gone with a couple of different guys that were already there, and they probably should have. But instead, I think they would be grooming like Tavita for sure. I think David Blau, the assistant quarterbacks coach, is really, really sharp, really, really bright young mind in the game. He's kind of a savant in a lot of ways. He's coaching his first year now, so this is like 4 or 5 years down the road. If you go through, say, Cliff leaves in 2 years, Tavita leaves 2 years after that to go take a head coaching job, and David Blau's at that point the quarterbacks coach and passing game coordinator, could he be the next guy? Maybe. I think that's definitely a possibility. 301-230-0980. Let's get one more football call in, and then I want to take some calls on the breaking news that the Commanders have hired new team president Mark Klaus. And the question I'd like to answer, or have you guys answer on the phones, is if you got to then meet with Mark Klaus, you get to go to a meet and greet as a fan with the new team president once he gets installed in January, what's the number one thing you want to tell him? What's the thing that you want the president of business operations to know? 301-230-0980. But first, let's get one more football call in with Reggie in D.C. Reggie, thanks for calling. You're on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, Craig, thanks for taking my call, buddy.
You got it.
My vibe, man, is crazy as a fan. Walk with me on this one, Craig. As a fan, right, you got blinders on, right? So you believe Sam Howell can be a good quarterback. You believe Eric Bieniemy can be, he came from Kansas City, when your common sense say Andy Reid was calling plays. You believe in Beck. You believe in Grossman. You believe in Carson Wentz, even though common sense tells you he was already watched before he got here. My vibe is clarity, Craig, because I didn't realize, because as a fan, you just have blinders on how bad we was, Craig. I'm talking like I didn't realize how much talent, mismanagement that happened with my favorite football team. Now, mind you, Craig, I'm 55, so I remember Beathard, Casserly and Gibbs. So I remember how it worked when it was good. But it's been so long that I just, my mind has been conditioned to just like, well, I never experienced it before, because it's been so long. But to see this current organization, right, to see this structure, to see how this team and the camaraderie and the culture is really established from the top to the owner, all the way down to probably the kitchen staff, is such a clarity and is such a relief. And I think you mentioned this the other day. We have cut 4 first-round picks. What team, Craig, can do that and be good?
It's a great question.
When you have something like that, your team, you got it. It's going to take you 4 or 5 years to redraft and, get some better talent in. And then forget the first rounds that we cut, right? What about the turnover in Dan Quinn came in, man, he didn't like the paint color. He didn't like the rug. He didn't like the food in the refrigerator. He didn't like nothing. He just got rid of everything. So I just got a vibe today of just clarity, like for the first time and RG3 was false hope because Shanahan didn't want him anyway. But for the first time in probably, I don't know, I can't even really think, but if I guess if you want to say 2012, that we actually now have a team and a structure that can actually be decent and probably can continue to get better. So it feels so good, man. And I appreciate you, man. I love your show.
Hey, Reggie, I really appreciate that. Thanks. And I love that call so much because it touches on a lot of different things that, and I'm not saying this is like, hey, y'all should have listened to me the whole time. It's just stuff that I think I said previously that from my experience doing this job in other places and seeing it, that people are just like, that doesn't matter. And like the biggest one, frankly, is ownership. And I know a lot of the stuff we talked about with ownership previously was about the misconduct of Dan personally and people that worked for him and the stuff that wound up in the congressional report. And all that stuff was really important. But I want every once in a while, I just kind of zoom out and be like, hey, I know y'all don't want to talk about this. I know you just want to talk about football. But I promise you, getting rid of this guy is going to help the football. Because he's really bad at the stuff that you need to be good at in order to have a good football organization underneath an owner. He's bad at hiring people. He's bad at having good ecosystems and creating that with whether it's technology, whether it's the food, whether it's the dining staff, the marketing people. Like this wasn't a place anyone wanted to be, from coaches to cooks. And that's a bad, bad way to run an organization, and a good way to make sure you have the worst people at the jobs to do them, because they're just happy to have any job. Anyone with a choice was going to go somewhere else, or you'd have to money whip them, which for players is extra bad because that means you're paying them more than you should on the salary cap, and that has repercussions down your roster. So there's that element to it. And actually, the point that Reggie made about just rebuilding the roster and the fact that they have no business being good with this much of a talent deficit, with all four of their last 4 first-round picks gone from the Rivera era. That's actually something we're going to talk about on Take Command. We're going to tape it tomorrow. It'll be out on Thursday with Robert Mays from The Athletic, and he's got such a great feel for the rest of the league. So I'm going to ask him that question. Logan and I, in like every production meeting the last couple of weeks, have been like, by the way, because you had Jamin get cut, and then the Forbes thing, and everyone in between, and it's like, how rare is this that you go 4 years in a row, whereby the fourth year, where they all could still be on rookie deals? I mean, had Chase played well and they picked up a 5th-year option, this would be the 5th year, where everyone who could be on a rookie deal outside of the current year's rookie was gone. And I'll ask Mays and see if he's got that answer, or some other teams that may pop to mind, and just how impressed he is with that when we have Robert Mays from the Athletic Football Show on the Take Command podcast, and we'll play some of that interview for you here on the Hoffman Show on Thursday. When we get back, though, here on the Team 980, let's get some calls in on the breaking news. The Commanders have named a new team president. His name is Mark Klaus. He is currently the president and CEO of the Campbell Soup Company, and that is actually much more than a soup company. There are a ton of brands that you know and have heard of, big monster food brands that are underneath that umbrella, and he's in charge of them all until late January, when he transitions out of that role and into the team presidency of the Washington Commanders. So if you could sit down with Mark Klaus on day one, some kind of fan forum, or maybe he does some interviews beforehand, so he's got some ideas coming into day one of the job, and you got to tell him one thing you wanted the new team president to know, what would that thing be? 301-230-0980. Your calls answering that question next. Mark Klaus was named the new president starting in January, and I think he's got a pretty full plate, obviously, that they're going to have to deal with. The biggest thing that is going to be taking shape in January is the stadium, and they're going to have to start getting a move on that ASAP if the RFK land has been released by the federal government, which we'll know in the next couple of weeks. And then if not, they're going to have to get to work with Virginia or Maryland to get to work and, hey, like, give us your best proposal. We're going to pick something soon. And so that is obviously the number one thing. But I also imagine there's some other folks involved on that project specifically that already are going to be leading it. I don't remember, to be frank, off the top of my head, who some of those key people are. Obviously, Harris is going to be involved. I would imagine Mitchell Rales will be involved. Mark Ein, Magic Johnson could certainly be involved on multiple fronts. I know that the Washington Spirit have talked about getting involved at the RFK site, and Magic as a co-owner. They're a minority partner with Michelle Kang. So there's that. There's other folks from other teams that want in on that site. And I also do wonder, by the way, with Adam Silver being in town yesterday, was he with Roger Goodell and Josh Harris on Capitol Hill yesterday? Because one of the sites that has been named is for a potential practice facility for the Wizards. It would involve cooperation between Josh Harris and Ted Leonsis, which would be kind of funny because they're obviously rivals in the NBA and the NHL, but they can get together and say, hey, this is good for DC, let's do it. And Adam Silver's involved. Like, that's definitely interesting as well. But we'll talk about all that with Eric Flack coming up at 6 o'clock. But beyond the stadium, I would love to know what you, the fans, think is the most important thing that you'd want to tell the incoming president, Mark Klaus, who, again, is leaving the Campbell's company to take this job. Anthony, do you have a ready to go? First of all, Anthony, just real quick, do you need to turn the heat up in there that you're sitting there in your full-on puffer jacket?
Do I need to turn the heat up?
Yeah. Are you all right? Like, you're wearing a puffer jacket indoors.
I know. I got to stay warm because I've been under the weather.
All right,
I'm not hot either.
Okay. Well, I'm like, it feels pretty
Yeah.
fine.
I feel the heat. Yeah.
Okay. So, all right. Well, I'm glad the temperature's at least fine.
Yes.
I
appreciate the concern.
Okay. So back to the task at hand here. You're a lifelong Commanders fan.
I am indeed.
If Mark Klaus was like, hey, you produce a radio show, you seem like a smart fella. I also heard you've been a fan for a long time. Anthony, what should I work on? Like, what's the number one thing that you'd want to tell him?
Well, training camp, I won back in Richmond.
Oh, that's your number one item?
I mean, just off the top of my head.
Okay.
Off the top of my head, yes. Is that a bad number one item?
I don't think it's what I'd have first. Here's what I would say to Mark Klaus if I got asked this question. And this is the thing that I'd be surprised to not get a lot of commentary on if we do this question again throughout the week or people get a chance to think about it. You got to take the brand seriously. And I know it is like where you take the brand is very, very, very controversial in that there's people that feel very strongly you should take the brand back to the old nickname. That's not happening, but there are a large group of fans that think that is something you should do. There is another group of fans that is just like, the current one sucks. Can we do something else? What I would say is, as much as I realize it's a pain in the ass to rebrand again, and while you might be able to get away with not rebranding if Jayden Daniels is awesome and you know, if you win a Super Bowl next year as the Washington Commanders, I think it's a lot harder to change the name because all of a sudden you now created some good memories with the current nickname, which is just the problem is nobody has any good memories with the current nickname. And so people are just like, change it to something else. We hate this because they mostly associate it with Dan Snyder screwing up the football team. That has been the Commanders era. But you can already, to an extent, feel that changing. And they're trying to do things with the brand of the raise hail flags and whatever to try to engender good feelings about the brand. But, like, you could just do something different and have it be your own. And, like, taking the time to explore that. Or saying, hey, we took the time to explore that. We don't think it's the right move. We realize that people are unhappy, but it's staying. We are the Commanders. Well, wait, where's Doug?
We are the Commanders.
Wait, punctuate, please. End it. It's a huge distraction in terms of the team being talked about. Take it seriously. Do the work. Find out if it's something you need to do. If you do that process correctly, unlike the yahoos who did it that landed on Commanders, and then be done. Figure out what it is that needs to stay. Figure out if you want to do any kind of homage, whether it's just the colors, whether it's like whatever it is. You now have smart people who have resources. Do not spare a dime. Take the brand thing head on seriously. Quit trying to tell fans, it's not a big deal. We'll get to it eventually. Because I think too many people care about it too much to ignore it. And again, I'm not saying you got to go back to the old nickname. In fact, I'm saying the opposite. You can't go back. That's not the world we live in anymore. And there's too much push and pull. And frankly, the more that time goes on and more people who feel really strongly about that don't care about the team anymore, or, sorry to be morbid, are not around in 20, 30 years, like that's just not going to be that much of an issue in terms of the old historical whatever. But getting something people like right now that they're excited about is a way to put a turbocharger in the revitalization of a fan base that wants to be revitalized. So, yeah, Anthony, I do want to see training camp taken care of, and I think that'll be a decision made alongside the training or beside the facility, because they need to do the practice facility, they need to do the stadium. But I think that the taking, again, I'm going to phrase it this way: taking the brand seriously, not necessarily that you have to change something, but showing the effort that you did the homework. And if the homework says we should stay where we are because the sentiment is changing and it's not worth the time or money once you've done the research, then at least I think you have some credibility. There's going to be some folks who are never happy, but you're not going to make everybody happy. And they'll be loud, and that's fine. But it just becomes a lot easier to tell them, hey, they looked at it. We're not talking about it anymore. That book is closed. And so I guess it would be take it seriously and close the book, whatever closing the book means.
That's the thing that I'm trying to wrap my head around, because even if they do the research, they do their due diligence, and they come to the conclusion, all right, we're going to stand pat at with the Commanders. What does that necessarily look like? Are we, we're not in on these meetings. We don't know, what they're necessarily doing, anything like behind the scenes.
You could release a couple numbers. You could say like, hey, in the last year, approval for the team or like approval is up 5% and disapproval is down 15%, aka more people are kind of like whatever, and we think those trends will continue because it is tied to winning. It is not actually tied to anything else. So like there are ways that you could release some of that data, but I also think that that's actually less important than it being what it is right now, which is we got other stuff to do, we'll get to it eventually. I think that open-ended question is just a cloud looming over the franchise, and so many other clouds have cleared. And again, this is purely from a business side. The football side, they've done all these kinds of things that have in many ways cleared the clouds, and they've done a good job of, on the business side, sprucing up Northwest Stadium. They've got all these new sponsors. They've done a bunch of really smart, great things, and they're dealing with a very, very bad hand that they were dealt. But the one big looming cloud that if you just even say, hey, we're not doing it, closing that book, leaving that impending nature of things over where it is right now, I think closing that book is really, really important. And I would tell him that, like, hey, this is something you need to take seriously, and swift action here is the responsible play, not pushing it off until later.
I hear you.
That's it. That's my take. 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. We'll take your calls on this, and then if we want any football calls for the end of the hour. And then Mitch Tischler is gonna join us to talk some ball at 5 o'clock. Then Jayden Daniels tape Tuesday is actually going to be at 5:15 today. So we're loaded up here on the Hoffman Show. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Mark Klaus, the new Commanders team president. What would you tell him if you got the chance to talk with him as he's set to take the job in January? 301-230-0980. Let's go to Jay. Jay, thanks for calling. You are on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, Craig, how you doing today?
I'm good.
Good, good. First thing I would tell him is don't do anything that Ted Leonsis has done over the last 25 years. You had him on the radio a couple weeks ago, and he told you how charming you were. And I wish you were taking callers because I would have said to Ted, Craig was being real. He was telling you the way it is. You've been a horrible owner for the last 25 years. You were granted the shade of Dan Snyder for all that time. So I would tell him, don't do anything Ted Leonsis does. And then secondly, I would see if you could get the stadium back at RFK.
I think that's going to be definitely project number one. And it's a very, very complicated multi-layered thing, not just with the governments involved, federal and local, and the hurdles to clear. But then, like, what kind of stadium do you build? How do you fill it? Like, any logistical issues. So, Jay, I appreciate the call. And, before anyone's like, is that really what a team president would be doing? Like, wouldn't there be other, like, I know that Jason Wright, like, one of his things that he was making sure that they were working on was, and not that he was doing the details of it, was like ingress, egress. How do we get people in and out of the stadium better? Like when Josh Harris took over, that was something that was really important to them. And like Jason was involved on some level on that. And so part of it is just as a president of a company, you set directives. And it's not like he's got to get in there and be like, all right, let me read a couple civil engineering books and see if I can get people in and out of the stadium faster and out of the parking lots faster. But can you find and hire the right people to solve those problems? And that is really what a president is. I mean, think about the president of a country. Like, they fill their cabinet with the people that they want to do the job in the way that they want it done. And then those people are in charge of executing the details. And that's really like ultimately what the job of president often is do you set the direction and do you hire the right people? And this guy's got a lot of experience in business that hopefully he's well networked, and along with people like Mitch Rales, who have run a bunch of companies in a bunch of different sectors, and Josh Harris, who's been involved in a lot of different things because he was in private equity, which then touches a lot of other places. Magic Johnson, obviously, sports and beyond. Like, there's a lot of people with a lot of varied interests from like land and all those kinds of things, and construction and that side of it, to the sports side, to different vendors, to whatever that are really, really well connected, and hopefully that means that the Commanders can get the best people involved in these really important projects. Let's go to Charlie. Charlie, thanks for calling. You are on the Hoffman Show.
How you doing today?
I'm good, Charlie.
Good.
How are you?
But anyway, they were talking about Campbell soup. That's great. And instead of calling it the can, how about the Super Bowl? Because RFK has been like a big bowl all his life. So instead of somebody says something about can would be very negative, but a Super Bowl would be great. That represents Campbell soup because we all eat out of a bowl.
Charlie, you realize that this guy is not like a random soup guy, right? Like, he's running a S&P 500, like, publicly traded multi-billion-dollar company. It's not just like a little soup brand, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
But Campbell's just huge.
Yeah, and I believe it or not, Charlie, I've heard of it. Thanks for the call. In fairness, everybody, Anthony told me not to take that one. I just wanted to make the point that he was in charge of a large company. I probably could have just done it without the... Let's go to Lap. Lap, thanks for calling. You're on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, what's up, Craig? Hey, good topic, man. Good topic. That was a hilarious call, man. The one before. I second, your sentiment and what you said about the team, the name and the logo. I think that needs to be addressed. And with you having the senator, I guess, that's involved with having us honor that again, or, making a big deal about us honor that, that's the time you seize the moment to, embrace that and not just dismiss it, because there's a lot of fans that's been fans of this team a long time. We want something back that represents, the old, or, let them be involved more so with the name change, but if it's not, a big thing, then, say that, because that's big for us, and if we can't get our stadium, we can't get RFK and, we can't get a new stadium, then that's something that needs to be addressed. So hopefully, man, they take it seriously, and maybe it'll be addressed at some point.
Yeah, Lap, I appreciate the call. And I think it's an interesting way to thinking about it too, of like, if you're a longtime fan and you want something back that feels like yours, like, is RFK, like, is that enough? And I know for some people the answer is no. Like, I'm a realist on this topic. And that means both. I understand that there are people that want the name back because it is tied to their childhood memories and that the team that they love. And they grew up wearing the gear, and it is like a part of your identity, basically. Like, I'm a fan. And there's I think also a large, loud group of people that are doing it as a culture war bit. And that's on every side of that, of like, you can, you can't. I just think, like, hey, there's probably a way to have a team name that you don't have to have this conversation, which I know because nobody else is doing it outside of like the Chiefs and the Braves. And there seems to be a common thread here, and I just rather not have to deal with that. But I do think, like, taking it seriously and acknowledging all of this like adults is important. And not to say that this group hasn't necessarily done that, but I think closing that book is really, really important. The RFK element is really, really important. I will say, though, I do think getting fans involved in the new team name, if they go that direction, is a bad idea. And the reason I say that is simply this. If you claim to want fans' input, and then they don't give you the input you want, and then you make a decision that is what nobody claims to have wanted, and then you tell people, oh, no, we listen to the fans. That is a formula for disaster. Just own it. You're paid lots of money. Do the research. And some of that will be quietly listening to fans, doing focus groups and things like that, doing audience research, market research, all that kind of stuff. But I wouldn't make a big public to-do about listening to the fans. I would say we did a lot of homework and research, and we think that this is the identity we want to be moving forward, and so this is our new name. Or, we found that the Commanders' nickname is growing in popularity as we move farther away from, the people that gave the team this name, and now people associate Commanders with, if you have like a word association thing, and, Commanders used to be number one answer, like Family Feud style. Right, number one answer, Dan Snyder. And now the number one answer is Jayden Daniels. Well, that makes it a hell of a lot easier to keep the name. And that's the kind of work that I'm sure Mark Krause and his team will be doing, Mark Klaus and his team will be doing when they get to work starting in late January. Again, the breaking news, Mark Klaus, the new team president of the Commanders under owner Josh Harris. That breaking just about an hour ago. We'll get back to the football next. Huge monster day for the Commanders' offensive line. 267 yards rushing. That had to sound good to Mitch Tischler. We'll talk to Mitch on a Tischler Tuesday next. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And let's get right to it on a Tischler Tuesday.
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not my beat.
Mitch Tischler is the co-host of the Beltway Football Podcast with J.P. Finley. He is a man who loves offensive line play more than any human being on the planet. And Mitchell, oh, buddy, the Commanders rushed for 267 yards, and an offensive lineman on the other team caught a pass on Sunday. Are you still just riding high? Like, how are things in the Tischler household right now?
Oh, that was a chef's kiss. It was a beautiful thing. I wanted 267 air horns, one for each yard the Commanders ran for.
I think that would take us to the end of the show,
Sunday.
Mitch. We only have so much time.
Yeah. Hey, it's that important. It's that big of a deal.
Okay, fair enough. What did you specifically like from the way the Commanders were able to dominate the line of scrimmage, whether it was schematic, whether it was attitudinally? What stood out to you as you went back and watched it and have thought about what the Commanders did to bounce back and put up 42 points on Sunday?
Yeah, schematically, I don't think it was particularly different than what we've seen earlier in the season or the past couple of weeks when they've struggled. I think for the most part, it was guys being healthy. And when you can beat up on a team who is 3-8 and, coming off their Super Bowl of a win against the Texans the week before, and you remind them early on in a football game, hey, you're the 3-8 football team. We're the 8-5 football team. We're here or 7-5 football team. We're here to remind you that we are the better team. Early on in that game, that first touchdown run that the Commanders ran, it was the most perfectly blocked play that I've seen in my time. I don't even know exactly what to compare it to, but it was exactly as the coaches drew it up. You had Coleman and Allegretti pull around and seal the edge. You had Big Luke and you had Sam Cosmi block down and create a big hole. And then on top of it, you had Noah Brown and John Bates downfield, making sure that B-Rob was able to get all the way to the end zone. Just from top to bottom, you had everyone do their job perfectly. And not only did they do their job, but all of them whooped the man in front of them. And it was just a perfect scene setter for what we saw the rest of the day for that Commanders offensive line and run game.
Yeah, I think it was really interesting to watch back, and especially with Logan, who is, outside of Mitch, the person who loves the run game most on the planet. And Logan was just it wasn't anything particularly fancy. They ran a lot of the same runs throughout the game. It got to the point where it was almost predictable based off formation. And the takeaway for me, Mitch, was they had this scout dead to rights. The Titans didn't change anything. Cliff and Anthony Lynn and David Rye and on down those Bobby Johnson, whoever else was involved in creating this game plan, clearly knew exactly what they were getting from Tennessee. They picked the exact right runs to expose it, and then they executed the hell out of them. And, that's great as long as you get the scout right. Obviously, they've gotten it right quite a few times this year, but I think that's kind of an interesting framing to think about it moving forward of how quickly can you adapt if a team makes you adapt? In this game, they didn't need to adapt. They just kept calling the same stuff. Titans didn't make a single change, and they just ran the ball down their throats from start to finish.
Yeah, and listen, the Titans defense was due for a regression. They were, I believe, heading into the game 27th in the NFL or second in the NFL in yards allowed and 27th allowed in points. So they were giving up a ton of yards, but they just weren't giving up points. And it was great to see the Commanders kind of take that step and convert a lot of yards into a lot of points. And listen, this is a Commanders offense that even when things were going well, not during that little stretch where they were unstoppable, but they've had their own red zone struggles. And to see them come through and make big plays in the red zone and score touchdowns and, kind of put their foot on the Titans' throat early, I think was important because both the Titans game and the Cowboys games started pretty similarly with, an opposing team that's kind of down, not playing particularly well, not moving the ball. Against the Cowboys, the Commanders couldn't convert that into any points. They allowed the Cowboys to get a little momentum, a little confidence, and as they moved through, obviously we saw what happened, at the end. Against the Titans, you took them out of their game plan early. They went into immediately a negative game script. Anytime you let, the Mayo man have to throw the ball, you're going to feel better about it. Will Levis with the likes mayo in his coffee, which is just the most absurd thing I've ever seen. But I did love that he completed a pass, albeit a tip and maybe a surprise catch by J.C. Latham. But I love seeing those O-linemen get involved in the passing game. And I joked that there shouldn't be rules against O-linemen catching balls anyway. So I like seeing that part of it.
That was the highlight of the Titans' offensive performance. Okay,
yeah, absolutely.
I mean, for you it was. For them,
you know what?
The touchdowns probably were nice.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I'm a Terp. I like seeing Chikakonkwo catch some yards. It was perfect that he got a lot of run, a lot of play, and ultimately didn't affect the outcome of the game.
Yeah. It's kind of like if the best player on your fantasy team is facing your actual team. That's kind of how you felt on that one. The defensive performance was kind of interesting because in many ways it was reminiscent of many of their other recent defensive performances. It's just, I think it shows, Mitch, the complementary football element of it, where if you give up a couple and your offense scores 42, it doesn't really matter. If your offense is scoring 15 to 20, well, all of a sudden that 19, your heart's in your throat and it's a very different outcome. But like truly down to down, the defensive performance didn't actually feel that different than a lot of other games this year, maybe with the exception of they got that early turnover, and obviously all of a sudden the Titans are down 28-0, and they've literally run 10 offensive plays.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that turnover is a big difference, and we've heard Joe Witt talk about it so much over the season, wanting to create more turnovers, needing to create more turnovers. It kind of, puts an exclamation point on that idea. Because you get that turnover, Mikey Sanders still punches the ball out, and all of a sudden you're able to turn a 7-point lead into a 14-point lead, first quarter, and all of a sudden you can't run Tony Pollard quite as much as they probably wanted to, and they had to kind of make a move towards the passing game. And quite frankly, Calvin Ridley is a very good receiver, and he couldn't find a way to get open. Nicky Keeney, Westbrook has a wild stat. I think it's like 1 out of every 5 or 6 targets, he scores a touchdown. He got his one big play, and it stinks that it happened. Obviously, you want to see, Sanders still play that a little bit better, but you get beat one time. It's not the end of the world when you're able to also turn the ball over your offense in such a positive position.
For sure. And Mikey's, I mean, it's funny. He gave up like 100 yards in this game, and no one's going to talk about it. He also, that touchdown he gives up to Westbrook Akine is the exact same route that BSJ gets burned on by Mike Williams.
Right.
Literally the same exact route. But it doesn't matter because your offense has put up a zillion points. And obviously in the Pittsburgh game, the situation is very different. But it just goes to show like the margin for error when you play the complementary football. Earth-shattering analysis here on the Hoffman Show. More points for you means the defense doesn't quite have to be as good.
Midway through the second quarter, the Commanders had 16 first downs, and the Titans had 13 plays. That's a recipe for a win, and it was great to see it heading into this bye week. I thought Jayden looked as healthy as he's looked in a long time. He ran the ball well last week, but to see him, dot a couple throws this week while also being comfortable running between the tackles, I think is a revelation for this offense. Obviously, there's a lot of concern about Brian Robinson and that ankle after the scary play, 2 weeks ago, and for him to come out and have more yards. I think it was his biggest first quarter of his career, and to end up with 100 plus yards rushing. It's just a lot of good vibes on that offense as you start heading into this bye week. And quite frankly, as bad as having a late bye week is, and I think we saw a little bit of attrition with the 3-game losing streak. If you're a playoff team and you have a late bye, they're going to be the healthiest team when it gets to that week 1 of the NFL playoffs. They're very obviously only the teams that have the byes late like they will are going to be there. So it's tough as you sled through the middle of the season, but now they can use that as a launching point for the playoffs. And quite frankly, I think with that win, they put themselves in quite a good position to be playing January 15th.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And they go 2-2. They're a 10-win team, and that should be good enough to get in. We will see. What are you guys doing on the pod for the bye week? Anything special that you would like the folks to know about?
Yes, we actually just taped our bye week special. We had head coach Dan Quinn join us for about 10, 12 minutes.
Ooh.
It was particularly interesting because we didn't do a ton of football with him. We talked more about, the man and kind of his outside, what he does outside, away from football as well. So interesting little interview. I think it'll give some folks a good little insight into who Dan Quinn is. And it'll be a fun little episode that we'll have out probably midday tomorrow sometime.
All right, I will look for that one in the feed. That is good stuff. We got Robert Mays on Take Command. I mean, I love Robert, but you got DQ. I think you win this round, Mitch.
Robert Mays is a great one. I'll tell you that.
I love me some Robert Mays. I love my guy Robert. But you got the head coach. That's a good get. Love that for you guys. Beltway Football Podcast, where you can catch it tomorrow about midday per Mitch Tischler. And if not, you should yell at him on all the social media platforms that he lied to you on the radio. Mitch, always appreciate it, sir. And we'll talk to you about something next Tuesday, unless you want to have a bye week and not talk on Tuesday.
Nope. Happy to come on Tuesday. Let me just leave you with one thing real quick.
Yeah.
The most important thing for the new team president is getting the ticket situation right at the stadium, both at Northwest Stadium now, not selling as many tickets to the brokerage firms, and then also figuring out when they get the new stadium, don't price out your fans. Don't turn the new stadium into what we see in Vegas and LA, where it's corporate and quiet and taken over by opposing team fans. Find a way to make it affordable for the fans who have supported you through all of the downtimes that they've had.
That is a fantastic call, Mitch Tischler. What a cherry on top of this radio hit. Thank you, sir. Have a good one, and we'll talk to you next Tuesday.
Absolutely. Have a good one, bud.
That is Mitch Tischler with us here on the Hoffman Show. Speaking of Take Command, speaking of how Jayden Daniels performed, it is time, 15 minutes early, surprise, for a Take Command Tape Tuesday. We get into Jayden Daniels' performance and how he was actually secretly the secret weapon, really truly secret, to the Commanders' running game success. Then Dave Johnson joins us at 5:45 here on a Wizards Game Day on the Team 980.
22nd pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Washington Commanders select Jayden Daniels.
Jayden Daniels holds the keys to the Commanders' future.
Daniels is going to walk it in for the touchdown.
Take Command holds the keys to knowing how he played.
In the big moment when you needed to make plays, he just consistently made plays.
It's time for a Take Command Tape Tuesday.
Jayden Daniels just lays it out there perfectly. What a throw.
On the Hoffman Show.
When you have a run game that is, I'm going to use the word predictable, and again, this is predictable within this game, not necessarily larger trends on the season. Like, predictable in that Cliff found something that they really liked, and Anthony Lynn and that staff, and then they were like, we're just going to hit it till they stop it. Tennessee never stopped it, so they just kept on doing the same things, and they would run the same exact play sometimes, same exact personnel, same exact formation, and they would get almost the same exact results. So why would you change? But if you're Tennessee defense, part of the reason why you don't just be like, oh, well, we've seen this before and sell out is there is a Jayden Daniels factor on the backside of some of these plays, and it's their GT play, but it's also a zone read, or there's an RPO on the backside of whatever run where there's a bubble here and then a different one of their runs. They have like the slants or they're running stick on the backside. How do you feel like Jayden was as like a decision maker in how he executed that, and what impact could you see that having on the Tennessee defense, even though his rushing total, we'll talk about him as a scrambler more in a second, but like his rushing total wasn't huge in this game, but I think he had a huge, hidden impact if you're talking about the stat sheet.
I mean, a huge hidden impact. I mean, even on the B-Rob touchdown. So when you're blocking GT, right, which it's a touchdown play to B-Rob, right? So you're pulling those two guards. The guy that normally makes the play is like the backside linebacker, right? And so in this play, because they're bringing like a safety down front side and they're bringing the front side linebacker on a blitz and the safety's replacing, you're really short, right? Because you usually the blocking surface blocks linebackers and defensive linemen. But when that safety's in there, you got to block him because he's basically a linebacker. So you're short to the front side of the run. So if that guy plays that correctly, he could end up making that tackle for probably a 3-yard gain. However, like Jayden's got the read on the backside. And so on the backside, you got Zach arcing for the hook player, right? Who is this kind of linebacker type player. And Zach's got a bad angle to him. But when Jayden carries out the ball fake, the defensive end and the backside linebacker both take steps to cover him, right? And you talk about carrying out fakes, like that was something at any level of football that is so important in the run game. Because if you can get those guys to just stop for a second, B-Rob's going to score a touchdown. And that's one example, right? There's other play where they run GT with Chris Rodriguez. It's the same thing. He carries out the ball fake. Both linebacker and defensive end step out. There's a huge crease. Don't even blocks that guy. C. Rodriguez just runs right by him, right? They run a wham, and Jayden acts like he's carrying out the boot with the zone read, and the linebacker fits the wrong gap because he thinks, I got to carry to Jayden. Oh, no, I got to get downhill, and there's two guys in a gap, and Rodriguez hits it for a huge gain. So in terms of hidden yardage, I mean, he deserves a ton of credit for all the blocking that he did. And it's not like he's physically mashing on people, but they're just aware of his presence, and rightfully so, because he can kill you. Absolutely, he can kill you. But I just think like that is the type of stuff that this run game has that no other run game in the NFL has. Maybe Indianapolis or something like that. But
Baltimore,
right? When you have guys that are dynamic like that, you have to always be aware of them keeping the football. And I honestly, in watching the film, I was like, what was Tennessee's actual plan for the zone read, for the keep? Because every team we've played over the last couple of weeks has had a very clear plan. We're going to pinch the defensive end. We're going to loop this backside hook player. We're going to take it away. We're going to give you false reads. We're going to play man-to-man coverage. And I felt like Tennessee was like, we're just going to play our normal defense. And it's like versus a player like Jayden Daniels, you can't do that. You can't. It just it doesn't work. And so that was something that really jumped out to me, was maybe he didn't have 100 yards rushing, but the first explosive play he helps on, right? The two explosive Chris Rodriguez runs, like he's the reason that they're misfitting those runs. So he didn't get 100 himself, but he definitely contributed to how productive and effective this run game was.
It's kind of wild because Denard Wilson, the Tennessee defensive coordinator, comes from Baltimore. It's like, don't you watch what teams do to Lamar?
And maybe that's why they space the defensive ends out a little bit more to make the read a little bit muddy. But it's like that's something I remember from when Robert was here. If you space the defensive ends out get width, then just hand the ball off because there's a crease there now naturally, right? And that's essentially what they did, right? It was like when B-Rob in the low red, we were just talking about this play. They're in 12 personnel with Ben Sinnott, and he's coming back across the formation, and they're running a zone read. The defensive end is so wide. He just hands it to B-Rob, and B-Rob doesn't get touched till he's on the goal line. You know what I mean? And then obviously Terry scores the next play, but like that's I don't know what they were thinking, honestly. Like I don't see a clear vision in terms of plan for stopping the run. And again, like kudos to Cliff, kudos to Anthony Lynn, kudos to Jayden. They all did their part, but again, like they were helped out schematically because it just felt like Tennessee was like, we're better than you. And obviously they weren't.
Yeah, there's a couple times where I thought Jayden made the right decision to pull it, and then guys made plays. And there's one where exactly what you talked about earlier, where like the linebacker comes over, like defensive end crashes, linebacker covers, and I'm like, ooh, it's one of those where like you're hitting pause, try to watch some couple things, and you're like, this is going to be a big get. Never mind.
Yeah, and
just like linebacker appears and it gets strung out. But you can see it in plenty of the big gains where he gives it in this one to where they're able to get that. Obviously, they play off the zone read where there's been a huge play for them in the red zone to get the touchdown to Ertz. I know they set that up a little bit differently than they've been running zone read, but like it just shows you like unless you have a Luke Kuechly, a Roquan Smith, one of these linebackers that has this encyclopedic knowledge, a Bobby Wagner of what the other team is doing. Guys are mostly out there playing, and they're not as attuned to all these little details that might be a tell, that might be a give. And I feel like Washington really took advantage of that. And I think another example of this that we can talk about with Jayden's performance, and that also obviously plays into Cliff, is how Cliff stacked personnel. I mean, I charted personnel in this one. I don't know how I choose what I chart, what extra random piece of information.
Sometimes you text me, you're like, let's talk about personnel. I'm like, what? I'm like, okay, let's do it. You know what I mean?
Sometimes as a game, it starts first couple, whatever. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Let's track this.
Let's see how it goes.
Sometimes it's a box count thing. Sometimes it's personnel. But like, the first 3 plays of the game, they're all in 12 personnel. Then they get out in their second drive of the game, which is like a 10, 11 play drive. The first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 plays are all in 11. They go to 13 for 1 play, which they try to take a shot, that tight end leak to Sinnott. I want to talk about that play more in a second anyway. But then they go right back to 11. So like on a 10 play drive, 8 of them are in 11. Now the people are changing, right? Sometimes it's Sinnott, sometimes it's Ertz, sometimes it's Bates. And then the receivers, sometimes it's Terry, Luke, Diami, OZ. Like they're all changing. But as a defense, often you're not going to match the people. You're going to match the personnel grouping.
Yeah.
And so offensively, you're rotating in fresh guys. Defensively, if you're sustaining drives, you're just getting tired. Yeah. And so I think that then Jayden was able to really attack some of those guys, attack some of those things. And you get some of the, just tired players out on your dudes. And, whether it's slip something to Zach up a seam here, or, knowing, hey, I got a good matchup with Terry over here. Like they did a good job of, and it also, by the way, shows the compounding nature of being efficient, converting first downs. Like you don't get that effect unless you can be efficient and actually convert the first downs, because then you don't get the 8 play drive. Yeah. But I feel like they did a really good job of that offensively, and then Jayden took advantage of some key spots and really did, I feel like, a good job in key situations, looking for Terry, looking, as DQ called it, looking for the lead dogs, the lead sled dogs to pull them down the field and put up this 42 points.
Yeah, 100%. I think the other thing too is just the stuff you talked about there. And this is like more fundamental, like more simplistic maybe, but it's like their first down efficiency in this game was crazy. It's the best it's been in the past couple of weeks. And, some of that's moving Terry around the front. But I also think, again, kudos to Cliff, is just like they're going to play quarters. Like what's the weak spot in a quarters coverage?
Right.
It's like the hitch spot. So just let's throw a bunch of hitches. You know what I mean?
They threw way more on first down, and
it's like,
it was stealing yards.
Yeah, it's like, let's not overthink this. And I think that's something I have a lot of respect for Cliff for in my like couple limited conversations, is it's like, let's not overcomplicate this thing, man. Like if this is good, like we're going to run it. And I think that's something that you see in this game 100%. It's like, oh, what's an easy throw? Oh, let's run a hitch to Terry. Great. And I love the concept too, because it's like, hey, we've got a really good zone beater here if we're not getting the coverage we want. But if we get quarters, like throw the hitch to Terry. It's to the field. Like It's going to be because of the 3 receiver side is to the offensive right. The flat player is going to push to that side, right? So you're just going to get a normal hook player to Terry's side. So boom, let's hit it, right? And I think just easy stuff like that. And again, like it helps when the first down on that play, I think there's a completion to Noah Brown on like a similar hitch type look. I think it's like a little sit route that gets you to 2nd and 1. There was a bunch of plays in this game. Like you mentioned the Zach Ertz play, which was on 2nd and 4. Like that 2nd and 4, like now they have to defend the run. They have to defend the pass. They have to defend everything that I have in my playbook. So I can run a little cute little rinky-dink play action there, and it's off an action they don't even run that much. I fake the pitch to B-Rob. Every linebacker is within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage, and Zach is up the seam. And it's like, that doesn't work on 2nd and 10. Like that part of the offense isn't there. And so I think that was really cool to see. Even the touchdown that Zach Ertz had, which you just talked about off that zone read, that's 3rd and 2. So that's not 3rd and 5. That's not 3rd and 6. That's not going to work in a longer down and distance situation. The completion to Terry was like a 3rd and 1, like something like that. Yeah. Like where they kind of, it looks like Jayden's booting out to the left and he looks like he's going to run and the safety steps up and he just dinks it over to Terry for a completion. Yeah. Like that stuff doesn't work in longer down and distances. It just doesn't. And that's where this offense has been crazy effective. So to see the running efficiency increase, again, I think B-Rob offensive line deserves a ton of credit for that. But also just like to your point, we're going to throw the ball a little bit more on first down. We're going to find some of these opportunities. That is to me the thing that is the difference. Like if you're looking saying, oh, why didn't they do this versus Dallas or do it versus Philly or do it versus Pittsburgh? It's because on 1st and 2nd down, they weren't as good. And I think you just see what this offense can be. And most offenses can be, but credit to Cliff because he's been able to find this multiple times this year where 1st down looks great, 2nd down looks great. And now our 3rd and short package is off the chain because our quarterback can run. We've got all these guys that can get open versus man-to-man coverage, and it's awesome. But it doesn't work in longer down and distances. So I think to me that was the number. I said it in the post game, but when you watch the film, it just jumps out on the film for you. Like one of the things I was worried about was Tennessee's crazy blitz package. There was not a lot of opportunity for them to run it because we weren't in any kind of 3rd and long situation. So credit to Cliff, credit to the staff, great execution on 1st down, but this is the formula offensively for them. And this is how they have to be successful. And to be fair, that's most teams in the NFL. Like it's hard, unless you're the Kansas City Chiefs, right? It's hard to be bad on 1st and 2nd down and then win a 3rd and long, unless you got Patrick Mahomes, right? That's just a fact. Right. But for us, this is how we got to do it. And I love how they got there with the game plan runs, with the throwing on 1st down, with just a crisp execution.
And I think also when you look at it, like they were devastating on 3rd down at times where like it's 3rd and 1 and they get to 16.
Yeah.
Like they're getting chunk plays because the defense is just like, I don't know what to cover here. Like we can't give up a yard. We have to be really aggressive. And then, it's a play action fake or whatever. They're playing man to man on the outside. You get Terry, on a good matchup and he gets a huge gain. And I think that was the other thing too with McLaurin. We talk about like Jayden's decision-making in this game. They really used Terry in key spots. I meant to tally this up, but I want to say like 5 or 6 of his 8 catches were on 3rd down or in the red zone. Like they picked their spots, and that's probably why it felt like Terry had a $150 receiving when he only had 80 something. Like it was a really, really sensational job of saying, okay, we're in a high leverage situation. Now let's move Terry to the right, move Terry to the slot, move Terry here, get this matchup, or like now we're going to pull out the thing that we've been setting up all game. And so I think that was really fantastic from Cliff as well. And then talk about execution, like Jayden puts the ball on him and Terry has 8 catches on 8 targets. Like that's big time stuff from your best players when you need it. And that's how you put up 42 points on any NFL team.
Yeah, and just going through the clips while you were talking, because it's a great point. The first 3rd and 1 is a slant to Terry. The 3rd and 2 in the red zone is Terry's touchdown, right, off of play action. And again, like that's awesome. The 3rd and 3 down in the red zone where Terry catches his 2nd touchdown. Those are huge moments, right, where you got to kind of, again, look to your lead sled dog. And great job by Cliff getting them formationally right to get them those opportunities. But those are big downs. And, like if you think about last week versus Dallas, like one of the early 3rd and 2s, we drop a slant that gets us off the field and kind of gets us out of offensive, gets the Commanders out of their offensive rhythm. Like why risk it? Let's get the ball to Terry. He's going to catch that ball. And, one of London's favorite sayings on the broadcast is like, death, taxes, and Terry McLaurin on a slant. And it's not untrue. Like, he just has a really good knack for running those routes in those moments. And again, Cliff moving around a little bit. It wasn't crazy. I think it was like,
well, that's the thing, right? It was a tweak, right? So typically they've lined him up. I pulled these up yesterday. They've lined him up somewhere between like 6 and 10 times on the right in most games. And like this week was like 11 or something like that.
Yeah.
But they also did use him a little bit more in the slot, a little bit more on the right. And that's the thing. Terry's having the best season of his career. This offense has been prolific for most of the season. They didn't need to reinvent the wheel and like go 50-50 splits and like have Terry moving around like he's Justin Jefferson. Just do it a little bit more often and do it in really important points to where the Titans defense is like, oh, this is different. What do we do now? And that's what they did. And they executed.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. And the other thing too is like, I think this is when you run 82 plays, you get to see more of the offense. And like when you're struggling, we said this on the post-game review, when you play Pittsburgh, when you play Philly, when you play a Dallas defense that seems to kind of have your number a little bit on the day, you don't get to see this stuff. And I think that was the other thing about this, which was great, is you saw the full kind of gambit of what they wanted to be and what they want to be offensively. You can do some different stuff. You mentioned the screen to Diami in our production meeting, like all that stuff. Like they ran 2 or 3 screens before that weren't very good, but then they hit that one because they had more time of possession and they got the ball more and they could keep taking bites at the apple. And like when you're really rolling offensively, like that's what you get, is more of those kind of opportunities. And I think when you juxtapose that or compare that to Tennessee, right, you don't get to really see Tennessee's offense because they're in this kind of hurry up, shot down the field look. You don't carry a lot of those plays, so a lot of it's redundant. It's very messy. It's challenging. It's gross. Like, that's hard, and that's kind of where this team's been the past couple of weeks, with kind of tough sledding, challenging looks from the defense. And here, all of a sudden, we get to kind of do what we want to do, and I think it leads to a very positive result.
So just for comparison's sake, at the 10:52 mark, then they did that 3. So with 1:52 to go in the first half, the Titans had run 13 plays.
Yeah.
13. They ran 10, and they were down 28-0. They get the ball back, go 3 and out. The Commanders go on a massive drive that eats up a ton of clock. It's a missed field goal drive. And they get the ball back with 1:52 to go in the in the first half. And they have run 13 plays in the game. It's impossible to get to anything.
Yeah.
And one last point on the Commanders' ability to extend drives that I just want to hit, it's more specific to Jayden, is he is like, this felt like the old offense in that when Tennessee did do things right, he still converted to successful plays. A couple of plays to highlight real quick. I mentioned this play a little bit earlier, that tight end leak, 5:01 to go in the first quarter. They try to run Ben Sinnott up the seam on this leak play. It's a shot. They kind of run Noah on a post. Sinnott comes back off of play action across the formation, leaks up. It's one of my favorite. I always just
plays
love this play because it's just like, sneaky tight end going up the seam on the backside. And Tennessee covers it perfectly. So Jayden scrambles for 5 yards, and all of a sudden it's 2nd and 5. Because it was on a 1st and 10. Couple drives later, there is on a first down. This is the last play of the first quarter. They run a play action boot. Jayden comes to his right. It's a 3-level read. Highs covered, mediums covered, lows covered. He runs for 7 yards.
Yeah.
It's 2nd and 3. Like, that ability to take perfect coverage and turn it into a successful play was how the Commanders' offense was so prolific earlier in the season, because it keeps you in the good down and distances. It extends drives. It does all the things that we just talked about. And even like they run that flea flicker in the middle of that big long drive I just referenced where it ends in the missed field goal.
Yeah.
And I actually think he could have thrown Terry here. It would have been a little bit of a riskier throw, but like, I think Terry's open. But he decides, it's not what I want right now. He throws the ball to Noah Brown,
Nice
7 yards,
check down,
curl
yeah.
route.
Mhm.
Yeah. He actually had a true check down to B-Rob later in the game. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh, well, he doesn't do that often. Normally he tries to scramble or whatever, but nice little check down in the flat to B-Rob. So this ability to take quote unquote perfect coverage and turn it into 5, 6, 7 yard gains. Like that's how you stay efficient as an offense. And I thought Jayden did a spectacular job of that in this game.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think like I'm really glad you brought that up because I had that in my notes and I just forgot to read it. But it's a huge difference. Like I just was going through his scrambles just to remind myself of the situation. And obviously the ones you highlighted are huge, but there was more. There was like a 2nd and 6 where he gets it to a 3rd and 1. Like, and those are
also, he scored a touchdown on a scramble. Yeah. That's an important one.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I just think like that is a great point. And it's something we talked about on the pregame preview is that because of how they line up and because of how they rush, there would be a little bit more space. And there was. And I think he took advantage of that and was very confident in his ability to get that done. But talk about raising the floor of an offense just with 5 plays. And they kind of feel like nothing plays. This game reminded me a lot of the Arizona Cardinals game in that way. Is his scrambles in that game weren't super devastating necessarily. They weren't like, oh my God, that's going to kill you. But it was like, oh, here's a 3rd and 2. I'm going to scramble for a 1st down. Or here's a 3rd and 7 or 2nd and 7. I'm going to get us to a 3rd and 1. And that's a big deal, especially given like the stuff you just talked about, which I think is a great point, is like when this play's taken away, they're covering the back, they're covering all the stuff. Like this should be a sack or this should be a throwaway. But you turn it into a positive play, it's extremely positive. And it lets the offense stay on rhythm, lets them stay on schedule, lets Cliff stay on schedule as a play caller. And it's so valuable. And it's to me, it's like, how do you keep that those high value scrambles in as you play better teams that are better at keeping them in the pocket? That would be my question moving forward, is like, because you see what it does for the offense. How do you continue to make sure that you have that?
Want more from Craig and Logan? Subscribe now on the free Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts. More Hoffman Show next on the Team 980 and the free Odyssey app.
It's Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Of course, you're home for Wizards basketball. Also, you're home for a chat about the future of the RFK Stadium site. Coming up at 6 o'clock with WUSA 9's Eric Flack, their chief investigative reporter, who's been all over this story. But right now, it is a Wizards game day, which means...
Right corner, Kismet open for three. It's there.
Time to get the radio party started.
Feeds now the right block of Alsar. Slam.
It's time for Dave Johnson on a Wizards game day.
Block by Coulibaly. Left wing George. 3 on the clock for three. It's there. Feel like busting loose. Busting loose. Crossover step back three. Oh. Jordan Poole. You are cool. I feel like busting loose. Busting loose now.
On the Hoffman Show.
Dave Johnson joins us from Cleveland. Hello, Cleveland. That is where the 2 and 14 Wizards will take on the 18. Did I even have that right, Dave? 2 and 16 now at this point, I believe. Wizards will take on the 18 and 3 Cavs. But before we get to that game, Dave, there's an NBA-wide trend that I wanted to ask you about. It's not a great one, and it just feels like everyone's hurt. We got the Mavs coming in here on Thursday. We'll be broadcasting live from the arena, which is a lot of fun. But when we set that up, we thought we'd have Luka and Clay and Kyrie, and now some combination of those guys are hurt, and we don't know if we'll see any of them on Thursday. A bunch of other injuries around the league. Does it just feel like the NBA is more hurt earlier in this season than in many of the years prior to you, or is that just am I missing on that?
To be honest, I don't know. I mean, it does fly against logic because certainly the technology, if you want to call it that, or the care that's provided for NBA players has never been greater. And I'm not saying that it's not been good care. It's obviously, but the sports science is greater than it ever has been. So, I think it's like anything. It probably is just a bad coincidence. I really don't have an explanation for that. And even, from our team standpoint, I mean, Kyle Kuzma, is not going to play again tonight, and he's out with a rib strain. And it kind of, happened as he was getting a shot blocked, and it was a play that you didn't really think he was even hurt on. And next you know, he's not only not finishing the game that happened against the Clippers, but he's out for at least 2 games. So I don't have an explanation.
Yeah, it's really bizarre. And I've heard some different theories on some of these things over the years, some of the schedule changes actually maybe having some unintended consequences, but it feels like something the NBA really needs to address because there are a lot of stars that are missing time. Unfortunately for the Wizards in terms of timing, Giannis Antetokounmpo was back for the Bucks last time out, puts up a 42-point triple-double. And I think on the other side of it, Dave, the big question I have right now for the Wizards is what do they need to do to get Bilal back on track? He started so phenomenally this year, but his last 10, he's averaging less than 10 points a game. Do you feel like how he's played has changed, or is he just missing shots? Like what's changed for Bilal, and how do you think they get it turned around?
Well, 2 things. Regarding the Bucks game, I know Giannis had his triple-double and had his 40 points, et cetera, but the Wizards in that Bucks game, they had the edge in rebounds, had the edge in free throws, had the edge in points in the paint, points off turnovers, fast break points. Go right down the list. If you go down the list, you think, well, maybe that's a Wizards win. The one category they lost out in was 3-point shooting. So in many ways, it was not Giannis. Giannis is going to get, he got 42, but he averages 32 for goodness sake. So, I mean, he had an average night for Giannis. The Wizards did everything to win that game on Saturday. It was, I think, and we talked about it on the broadcast, maybe their most complete game all year from start to finish. But you got to make shots in this league, and specifically in this league, 3-point shots. You do the right thing against Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Bilal Coulibaly was part of the double team on him. They shut him down. He desperately throws it out front to Taurean Prince, who does make a 3. We miss a 3 at the other end, that type of thing, and that it's fine margins. And those are not excuses. I'm just explaining, how the Wizards can put themselves in a position to win and still not win. But they're going to, I believe, because they're in that situation Saturday night, they'll grow from it because it does show you that the NBA, you could be doing well, and then you have 1-2 bad possessions, and it flips the script. In terms of Bilal, I think it's important to note that first of all, he's got a heavy defensive
responsibility every night. But secondly, I think you could argue that they do need to find him more, but he creates, so many opportunities for himself. Specifically to Saturday, he was not getting some foul calls that later Brian Keith said they were admitted that should have been called. But also, and this is key, and you think about whatever job you're listening and doing, we're changing lineups. So when you change things, who you work with, it does impact how you do your job. Think about when you host a show, and maybe for the first time you're hosting it with somebody else, and suddenly you've never hosted before, and suddenly you don't know that person's tendencies, or as people are listening, you get into a flow when you've got the same people on the court. We haven't had that for there's been injuries involved, but also just it's part of the discovery process, experimentation. So, I think he'll get going. This team will get going, but again, I just saw the stat today. Week 6 in the NBA, we have the toughest schedule in the NBA. So, thanks a lot, NBA. But, hey, listen, did I call the Atlanta Hawks winning 2 in a row against Cleveland Cavaliers? No. So that's why you show up tonight. It's on Cleveland's bright red court, which I can barely see straight by looking at it. The Cavaliers will have the advantage. There's no question. But, that's why we show up every night. There's not a script. And maybe the Wizards, will shock the NBA tonight by ending their losing streak against Cleveland.
We've seen a couple of wacky results in the NBA this weekend. Certain teams that are banged up, beating good teams by a lot. These things do happen in the NBA. I am curious, Dave, just, kind of being with the team on the road. Do you, are there any cracks in terms of how the guys are talking, even in press conferences? Is BK still the same guy? Because this, we've talked about how at some point you just got to break the streak. We can have the big picture in mind and all, but if you're living it every day, 14 straight losses is a lot of losses. Are there any signs that it's getting to these guys at all?
No, because and not because they don't want to win. Let's make that clear. I mean, believe me, they don't. You don't make it to the NBA without an innate desire to win. You're not just here to be a passenger. You're here to win. Perfect example, Saturday night against the Bucks on the road. Giannis comes back. Right before you start the game, the metrics don't look in the Wizards' favor. But that didn't stop the Wizards from leading in that game, from competing in the game, making it a fourth-quarter game. Yesterday, we had practice. We actually went to Chicago from Milwaukee before coming here. We had practice in University of Illinois, Chicago. These guys, most of their babies, when we talk about Corey Kispert being an elder state, I understand. We have Jonas and Brogdon, and we got a couple vets. But they cannot wait to get in the gym the next day. And so what this season is about, that we just closed November. You want to get better in December, and part of getting better is actually closing out some of these games. But in terms of your question about cracks, no, they can't wait to get to the gym, and because they're frustrated with losing, and they're going to approach tonight let's go ahead and shock the world. It might not happen. Again, Cleveland's only lost twice. Or no, wait a minute, they've lost 2 times this year, right? You said
I think they're 18-3. 18-3 is the record.
Huh. Okay. Well, regardless, they win. And the bottom line is, you're right. They're 18-3. But as I know, always you're right. But the bottom line is, this team will compete tonight, and we'll see what happens. But in terms of, this is not a team. I've seen all kinds of teams in the NBA. I've seen teams, and again, it's a workplace. I've seen teams that were good teams, our teams or other teams, that are just tired of playing with each other because it's gotten stale. That's not. This is all brand new. So every day is a new day. Every day is a chance. That's the difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And hey, it's a new day today. Cavs, by the way, they've only lost once at home. So why not just upset all the trends? Let's have some fun tonight. Dave, I even have a name for it that we could call specifically your broadcast. Tell me if you like it. We could say it's a radio party.
Yeah, that could catch on. We'll see.
We'll see.
We'll try to see. And sometimes I miss the news being on the road. We've been on the road so last. I could have sworn I saw an article that the Major League Cricket franchise
proposed going to the RFK site.
That is
Is
true.
that part of your discussion?
Yes, yeah, that is
So-
part of our discussion with Eric Flack next. The
There
cricket,
you
the
go.
soccer, the basketball, because, hey, Adam Silver was at the game this weekend. What was he doing at the football game? Was he joining Roger Goodell and friends on Capitol Hill? So, I don't know, Dave. We got to go talk to Eric and find out.
Well, and that was a discussion point here in Cleveland, believe it or not, because I guess the PA system went out on Sunday at RFK. Pardon me, at what is it called now? The place in
Northwest
Randall.
Stadium. Yeah.
Thank you. So,
Yeah.
There's always something to talk about. Always something to talk
Always.
about.
Always. That's why they give me 3 hours a day here on the radio, except for today, 2:45, because we have to give thanks to Dave and Glenn coming up at 6:45. So about 47 minutes from now, pregame takes the air. Dave, always a pleasure, sir. And I guess I'll see you on Thursday because we're broadcasting live from Cap One.
I'll seek you out.
All right.
you.
Sounds
Thank
good.
you.
And I hope that banner that you were looking for shows up. That's an inside joke between me and Dave. Anthony, I'll tell you about it in the break. But we got to go because Eric Flack is basically on hold at this point. Flack next on the RFK latest here on the Team 980. Joining us now, WUSA 9 Chief Investigative Reporter Eric Flack, which must mean, Flack, that either something terrible has happened somewhere or there's an RFK update. And thankfully for us, there is an RFK update.
Let's talk RFK.
Let's do it. So Steve Daines had been holding up the ability for RFK to even be considered by the entire Senate. Nevertheless, ultimately, if this thing gets out of Congress and to D.C., where we can decide for ourselves, because we're grown adults, damn it. What changed for Steve Daines, the senator from nowhere close to here that had been holding up this entire process over the last couple of weeks?
You know what? Yeah, what he would tell you changed is that his constituent, and you talked about how far Montana is from Washington, D.C., he always claimed and contended that he was involved in this because the artist, the family, the originator of the old Redskins logo, the Native American head, was created by a member of the Blackfeet tribe in Montana, and that the family, although so many people found the name and some people found the logo offensive, the family itself, the descendants of this person who created the logo, was very offended that they had kind of moved away from it. And Daines, who has, like, in recent weeks, taken this as an anti-woke, platform, that this was just woke gone wrong, said, I'm going to oppose this RFK bill until the franchise, the Washington Commanders, honor this logo and bring back the logo. And he wanted to do so on behalf of the family. And the family had many demands, lofty demands that were likely unrealistic, including the logo being brought back in uniforms. The team had negotiated, I've been told, with this family going back long before Daines, and finally, before a game earlier this season, they honored the logo. If you actually go to the club level of Northwest Stadium now, there is a whole display, a whole little kind of like museum to this logo and the history of that logo in the Blackfeet tribe. And what Daines said was that, it wasn't everything he was looking for, but kind of dramatically said the day of this vote in the Senate committee, I spoke with the grandson of Blackie Wetzel from the Blackfeet tribe in Montana just this morning. And he said, I am satisfied. So because he is satisfied, I am satisfied as Senator Daines. And while I put them on notice that I want to continue to make sure they continue to honor this logo in the right way, I am now voting in favor of this bill that to advance it into the full Senate for a vote. So, what he said changed was basically that the team had come around, for lack of a better term, and that he could now get on board because his constituents were on board.
Okay, whatever you say, Senator. Sure.
He could have done this a while ago. There's a question about whether or not, if he hadn't done this, would in fact the bill have gotten a hearing a lot earlier, and we wouldn't be in this time crunch. I've actually recently been told by people close to the situation that even with Daines's opposition, there were life events that actually conspired to stop this that went beyond Steve Daines. Apparently, the bill really was supposed to get hearings at other times, but like there was a hurricane in North Carolina, you'll remember, that diverted. There were other world events and so this person who's close to it said it really wasn't just Daines; it was also just a lot of bad luck that has left us where we are right now.
That's interesting, but I also Daines have just been whatever he's been the last bunch of months, years at those hearings too, but whatever. Right. It's here now. Eric Flack with us, WUSA 9 Chief Investigative Reporter. So Daines lets it go. It gets voted on in the committee. It passes the committee, which means now it needs a hearing in the full Senate. And as you mentioned, Eric, we are running out of time. I think those of us that pay attention to politics kind of know how this works. Anything that is happening in December outside of defense bills and spending is going to hopefully, or is hoping to get attached to one of those two things, because then you get these big giant omnibus bills that everyone hates because they all lament the pork barrel, this and this, and then they all do it again every single year. So what are the chances and what needs to happen for this RFK bill to be attached to one of those other things and thus give it a chance at passing?
Yeah, and now if you're a Washington Commanders fan who wants the team back at RFK, back in DC, you are a big fan of pork barrel bills, because that's exactly what we want to be right now.
Quick, someone stick DC statehood on one of those things too. Wait, did I say that part out loud?
You can. I'm not sure that that one is going to be able to slide through as quietly as they hope RFK slides through. Listen, there's a lot of momentum right now. NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell in town for the Titans game mysteriously ended up on Capitol Hill on Monday alongside.
I'm starting to think, Eric, he might have not come for the Titans game.
Do you think he just was trying to save on plane tickets and just decided to do it all at once? But, he was in that box with Josh Harris and D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser. They were all high-fiving, smiling. The next day, he is on Capitol Hill with Josh Harris. They are meeting with a number of Senate leaders, pushing for, as the team said, this specific bill and other issues. But really, this RFK Stadium bill is the one that matters most, and the one that the league is focused on really as much as the team. Keep in mind, we reported that the NFL has had its lobbyists on this RFK issue really dating back to last December. I mean, this is not new to them. The NFL has behind the scenes been pushing for DC to at least have the right to be part of this discussion with long-term control of the RFK site. We now know that this is down to the wire, and it will be up. And I think what the NFL commissioner, what Josh Harris was up on Capitol Hill Monday trying to do was to convince people to just attach it to this bill. Likely the spending bill. It could be a defense bill as well, but the spending bill is the one we know has to get passed in some form or fashion. No standalone bill is going to get a hearing at this point, which is why all of these smaller bills, and the RFK bill will not be the only one, gets attached to these larger bills. It is ultimately up to Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, a Democrat, because we are still under the control from the last election, not the election that just happened. So all of that, those political winds will change in January. But for right now, until the end of the session, for the next couple of weeks, it really all goes through Majority Leader Chuck Schumer from New York's office. So these things happen behind closed doors. Obviously, there's going to be negotiations on whether or not he will ultimately allow it. I'm told by people who are close to this that, on its face, this is a very uncontroversial idea. This is not something like statehood, if we want to use that as an example, where people are on both sides. There are a smattering of opponents for really random reasons here and there. But for the most part, this is a very germane, unoffensive land bill. This is a land bill. That's all it is. And if you think about it, outside of our little DMV, our little Commanders bubble, people in Montana, in Illinois, in Wisconsin, and Texas, they don't care about this. They literally could give two you-know-whats about who controls the RFK site, whether it's DC government or the federal government. And so, on its surface, it is a not controversial idea. The only question now is, does politics get in the way? Why would it get in the way? And ultimately, will Chuck Schumer allow this to be inserted in? And I guess, would there be any 11th hour opposition from Maryland senators who are concerned about the Commanders leaving FedEx Field or Northwest Stadium and what would happen to that site in Prince George's County? Anybody from Virginia still holding out hope they would come out there. But there's so much momentum that I think once it gets into the bill, that's the biggest challenge at this point.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's such a great point that this is a land bill. And by the way, if this land was in Virginia or Maryland, it would be different. Like the federal government, I mean, I guess
Wouldn't
if there
know.
was federal land somewhere, there perhaps could be a status where a federal land needs to get released by Congress somewhere else outside of the district. But then at least there would be senators from that state to argue on said state's behalf. This is very, very silly, all of it, and that's why I made the statehood joke in the first place. Because if DC was a state, then we wouldn't have to worry about any of this. It also is worth pointing out that Schumer, obviously from New York. You would imagine he's got pretty deep relationships with a company like the NFL, an entity like the NFL that is based in New York. And that actually did pop another thought into my head, because Roger Goodell was not the only commissioner at the game on Sunday, Eric. Do we know if like the NBA is involved at all in this? Like, was Adam Silver, who's not exactly easy to hide, he's very tall, was he involved in any of this? Because there also has been all this talk about other teams and like the Spirit have talked about this. I think the cricket team came out the other day saying like, hey, we'd love to have some kind of facility at this RFK site. Like, are there other players besides the NFL, as if you need anyone more powerful than the NFL, but the NFL, the city of the District of Columbia, the Commanders involved here?
I'm going to start by saying I don't know exactly why Adam Silver was there, and then I'm going to follow it up with a fact. I don't know exactly why Adam Silver was there. Here's a fact. The agreement that Ted Leonsis has with Washington, D.C. over the $515 million of taxpayer money to fix up Capital One includes a provision for finding a new practice facility. Option A was Gallery Place. They studied that. That's unfeasible. They are now looking for land. RFK has been specifically named in the language as one of the options for a practice area. The last time, and I saw you there when Ted was having that availability about the money being approved, I tried to ask him, was he still interested in the RFK? The question got cut off, and as he walked away, he didn't answer the question. So RFK, the idea of RFK for some sort of a Wizards practice facility is not like people just making things up. That's in language that Ted was interested in. Is there room for a Commanders, RFK 2.0 and a practice facility, and is there any world in which Josh Harris and Ted Leonsis are going to like share land in some way, shape, or form and be neighbors with the amount of, things we hear about, rivalries, I'll just say, between owners in general. Those are all questions that seem like those would be things that would need to get resolved. But Ted certainly has his sights on the potential for a new practice facility, and RFK has been mentioned. I think it is clear that option A for Washington, D.C. is to have a new football stadium there.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And you think about the things that we're going to miss out on, such as the World Cup coming because of
unbelievable,
the situation.
Unbelievable. I'm still not over the World Cup thing.
Yeah, so whether it's major concerts, whether it is World Cups, whether it is other world sporting events, having a world-class stadium in the district obviously would go a long way. So
at least,
go ahead, Eric.
At least Kendrick and SZA are coming, though.
I almost said that. That wasn't asked today.
We are turning it around.
If Kendrick is coming, then actually everything's fine. We're doing great. They've already made enough upgrades to Northwest Stadium that just stay there. Sure, why not? All right, if this thing, Eric Flack with us for another minute or two here on the Hoffman Show. Eric, of course, the chief investigative reporter at WUSA 9, has been following the RFK story as well as anyone for the now many years. We were joking in the press box the other day, Eric. I think Michael Phillips and Rick Snyder have a bet on where the next stadium is going to be. They bet lunch on it in 2014.
Really? No kidding.
Yeah.
That far back?
Yeah. I didn't even live here. I've almost lived here for 10 years. I didn't live here yet.
Snyder started it a long, long, long time ago. And it really got heated up again 2 years before Snyder left. But that makes sense. So 10 years ago, a decade-old bet, and it will be settled in another 5 years.
Yes, just they'll be on their walkers going into the Cracker Barrel or something. Sorry, Michael and Rick. That was me. It's been a long time. That was the point of the joke. Not that either of you are old. All right, so what was my last question? Oh,
I don't know, but it
was.
wasn't my joke. So you're gonna
how much longer could we be waiting? In fact, that is actually the question, because I think we've both done some reporting on this in terms of, hey, like, when's the drop dead date in terms of you just give up on RFK? Because you could have Landover 2.0 and start construction tomorrow because you own the land. Virginia is like ready to give you $1 billion any day you want. But they want RFK, but eventually you just go like, all right, this is not going to happen. And whether it's the changing political tides next year when the new Congress is in session or whatever other things they are considering, is this it? If they don't get it through this year, do they move on to something else because they have to, because 2028, when this lease is up, is not getting any closer, or is getting closer, is not getting any farther away, or do they make one more run at it? And if that means they don't open a new stadium until like 2031 or 2032, then so be it, as long as it's at RFK.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'm not sure that they even know. I really honestly, from the people I talk to, I think it's ultimately going to be up to 1.5 people, meaning Josh Harris and, I'm sure Markine and Mitch Rails' whole Magic will have a vote, but ultimately it's the majority owner, and it's Harris. I think the time from the people I've spoke with is becoming an issue. Somebody said, we're already looking at 2030 now. So we're looking now. If that is, you either get DC or you decide on Maryland or Virginia next year. If you take another year for DC, you're talking now every year, you're pushing it back a year. I mean, that's just the reality of it. And that's best case scenario. And without any guarantees that it's going to be any different.
Right. You could just be pushing back Maryland or Virginia a year because you don't get it.
And to the extent that those conversations were happening on Capitol Hill yesterday, and to the extent that they were like, what about this year? What does next year look like? Maybe what happened, some of the conversations they're having now is really is framing what they would do in the worst case scenario. But the question is, do they move on? And I don't think anybody knows yet. I do believe that they are solely focused on the next couple weeks, and they will cross that bridge when they come to it. What I know from my reporting and talking to people is that they are concerned about the time. And, I was not there. I heard it was not a full stadium. I don't know if you're out there against the Titans.
I was,
Was it a full stadium?
Getting in and out Sunday was the easiest it has been all year.
Okay. So, and that's still a team that, despite a couple losses, is really, really in the thick. That stadium is still a problem, and they recognize it. And they got to do something about it. And I think they're business people about that. So while I don't think we know, I think they're focused on these next couple weeks. And I think DC is the first choice. And I think if they get the land, I truly believe in my heart of hearts they work out the money. I think if they don't get DC, I think they got a really tough decision. I know they're worried about the time.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I will say, they have done a tremendous job with that stadium. It looks so much better now than it did when they took over a year and a half ago. But I think the stain of, it's that place. Like, that's kind of going to be on it until the day that it closes. And there's no nostalgia of this dump is our dump, because nobody has any good memories there outside of like one RG3 game in 2012, unless you were there for the Hail Mary for Jayden a couple weeks ago. So
it is the definition of lipstick on a pig. It really is. And there's only so
very
much
nice lipstick.
Really nice lipstick. Like,
so
Chanel
credit Josh.
That's a thing.
Hey Harris, your lipstick choice is fantastic, dude.
I mean, it's the best lipstick money can buy, but it's still being put on a pig, and I think even they behind closed doors know that.
A hog, you might say.
How did I miss that?
I don't know. It was right there. It was right there. Hey, that's 1 for 2 on jokes for me. So, we'll take what we can get. Eric Flack, he's a serious newsman, chief investigative reporter, WUSA 9. You can catch all his reporting at their website, WUSA9.com. And, of course, on your television. Eric, always appreciate the time. Thank you so much, sir.
Hey, I appreciate you, Hoffman. Later.
What's up, kiddos? It's your boy Clinton Yates from ESPN. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. Tell your mama I said what's up.
It's Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Wrapping up here on the Team 980. Wizards and Cavs coming up in about 15 minutes. We got the pregame show. Dave and Glenn out there in Ohio. O-H-I-O. That was a call back this weekend, Anthony. That's what that was. To the state of Ohio. Oh, no.
Oh, no.
Ryan Day lost again.
Oh, no.
Whoopsie daisies.
Yo, we didn't talk about the weekend, but what do you think of college teams, especially during rivalry week?
It's actually a low-key, really hard phrase to say.
What?
There's a lot of that happened. Rivalry week.
Yeah. You say that so easy.
Professional, I think.
But yeah, a lot of people just, staking their flags in the
yeah.
center of stadiums.
How existential do I want to get on this? Kind of. I have a theory. Like, we now have a bunch of kids in college who went to high school during COVID. And I don't think that we're going to understand the repercussions. It's something that is going to be studied for hundreds of years. The repercussions of COVID and the lockdowns and, again, from a medical, I'm not doubting any of the decisions that were made because I'm not a scientist and I'm not an expert and I'm not a, what's it called? The infectious disease experts, whatever those are called. Like, the lockdowns clearly were the right thing to do from not spreading COVID. And if we had all agreed just to stay in our house for a month, we probably would have been out of our houses a lot sooner, but that we don't need to fight those battles again. People are trying to make a living and whatever. But with school being canceled the way that it was and the lockdowns and all those kinds of things, we have a generation of kids now who just wasn't socialized in the way the rest of us were socialized. That combined with the fact that a lot of these kids and all of us are way more online and probably could touch grass way more often. Online's not real life, but it became real life for a lot of these kids at a very formative age. And now they're in college and they don't know how to act. Do I think that's the entirety of it? No. Do I think that there is probably some truth to that theory that behavioral psychologists and sociologists and whatever elseologists will study for the next whatever number of years? Yeah, probably. Bet you didn't expect that answer.
I didn't. But I wholeheartedly do agree with,
you work with middle school kids and high school kids and are around high school kids and if working with these kids as they get to college, I would assume the last couple of years for that of you there's been some stuff where you're like, oh, is this how we act now? And part of that is things change, we all get old, time comes for everybody, and eventually you're just not the cool young person who's setting the trends anymore. You're the old person being like, well, when I was your age, and it happens way faster than you'd like it to.
It does.
But I do think that some of this is, again, there were things that had to happen because we had a once-in-a-century pandemic. But the socialization aspect of it was, is going to have some repercussions that just because we're long out of the pandemic doesn't mean that those aren't going to be lasting. And I think that, these kids that are now in college and seemingly don't know how to act and act like they're online all the time in real life and don't understand that if you do crazy stuff to a person's face, they get to react and it's not a tweet back. I kind of think that is, or that a tweet back that in real life is actually you punching someone else in the helmet is actually not how you're supposed to respond.
Yeah.
It goes both ways, both the provocateur and the one who is provoked. No, none of these kids know what they're doing.
Nope, they do not. Even going back to, I guess, right before COVID started, where people were head tapping people. I guess that's right after COVID. But you head tap somebody when we're young, nah, we're not going for that, man. There's a way you act.
Yeah, I think it's
guys,
also, I do think it goes back. It's just the general taunting nature of a lot of, I don't know when it started. I don't know who you can point to be oh, that was the guy who started that trend. But the too small stuff, just the general nature of I've even heard this talked about with some kids, like youth athletes, like 9 and now we really sound like old people, but whatever. We're too deep at this point. Where it's like they make plays so that they can celebrate. It's not even about winning. It's like, oh, I want to score a touchdown so I can do the gritty. Or I want to score on someone so I can hit the too small thing. Not I scored on you so we won. Like competing is supposed to be about ultimately winning. And there is also, I think, a respect of competition, because ultimately the harder you have to try, the more you respect your opponent, the more the win means something. Like if I were to say, hey, Anthony, let's play rock, paper, scissors. It's like, oh, yeah, all right, competitive juice is flowing. Hey, Anthony, we're going to play rock, paper, scissors. I'm going to put down paper every time. You're like, that's not any fun.
Yeah.
The point isn't actually competing. The point isn't having to earn it. And that is a fundamental part of competition that if you change the incentive to, and this is all like intrinsic, internal incentive to be like, I want to do this so that I can become the center of attention. That seems like it would have some consequences the bigger the stage gets.
Yeah.
And so now you got these kids that when they were 9 were like, I want to score so I can gritty. I guess the gritty hadn't been around 9 years, but you get the point.
Yeah.
I would head tapping people or whatever, and now they're in college and they go like, I'm going to be the guy to plant the flag. And then the other guy's like, well, I guess that means I have to kill you.
Yeah, pretty much.
And I also think, like, frankly, this generation of college coaches is pretty disappointing as individuals. Like, you got a lot of clowns coaching college football. I think you've always had a lot of clowns coaching college football, but now the power structures are a little bit different, and there's a lot of things that are just different.
Yeah, it's a lot of clowns everywhere, though. Not just in the college.
That's probably also true. But I think particularly in college,
yeah,
you have a lot of people that still like being the center. Like, I think there's a good group of college coaches that like really like the sport that either left or went to the pros because they're like, this isn't any fun. And I get it. Like, I do think that some of the changes in college sports are for the better. Like, I do think players should be able to make NIL money and all that kind of stuff. Just free market economy, baby. But at the same time, like, there are repercussions. There's a reason that, like, believe in, personally, I believe in free markets with limitations and guidelines and things like that, and, some regulation, because otherwise there's a lot of unintended consequences. And I think in a roundabout way, it's kind of one of them. There we go. We got an economics discussion for the day and our behavioral psychology discussion for the day. Now it feels like the show could be over. What time's the show over, Anthony?
38:58.
Oh, we got to get going. Hey, everybody, we haven't had a chance to do this because our shows have been real short lately. We had a whole bunch of stuff to do. In fact, our show's short again tomorrow, so I don't know if we'll get to do it tomorrow. So let's have a Real Things episode, shall we?
Real things.
We're not going to be so this year.
Real people.
5 and 11. Not very good.
Said into real microphones.
The culture is actually damn good.
We're reaching the end of an era in Formula One. The season ends this weekend. That is the end of the Carlos era. Yes, that's right. The Charles Leclerc, Carlos Sainz bromance at Ferrari, which produces great social media content like this.
Tongue twisters in Italian.
All right, so Carlos, to you now. How do you say when in Italian?
Quando.
And how do you say how many?
Quanti.
And what about fifths?
Quinti.
I count.
Io conto.
I'll do the math.
Okay. Io
farò i conti.
Farò i conti.
So how many fifths do I count when I'll do the math behind the scenes?
You following, Anthony? How many fifths are we counting when we do the math behind the scenes? Let's find out.
I need to read it.
I think you do.
Quindi quanti quinti conto quando farò i conti dietro le quinte?
That's a difficult one.
Quindi quanti quinti conto quando farò i conti dietro le quinte?
Quindi quanti quinti conto quando farò i conti dietro le quinte?
Yeah, but it's like even singing, you can sing with this.
Yeah.
Quindi quanti quinti conto quando farò i piani dentro le quinte?
That sounds someone that wants to speak Italian but doesn't know any Italian.
Okay.
Yeah, ciao.
That was a lot.
That was a lot. When I was learning French, there's a lot of that in French too, where it's like qua 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 qua, and it's like the ducks flew over the moon, and you're like, how does that mean that?
Yeah.
Anyway, Peter Piper did pick a pack of pickled peppers. We'll see you Thursday at Capital One Arena. Don't forget that. Short show tomorrow, but see ya at 4.